So I guess what we've tried to do is really go around and talk about how to be proactive and not just from our own worlds, but what care providers, are literally putting in place to be proactive. But acutely aware there's the other side of the coin where things do go wrong, and CQC invariably can turn up on that morning. It's all hit the fan, So it's probably worth just talking a little bit about how providers can navigate that, in the worst moment proactively. Because you need to switch, don't you, from okay, well, it's happened to these are the things we're going to do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this must be for Care Improvement Associates when
we often hear from providers when they are in that situation. They've had an inspection or something's happened. They've had a breach or they've safeguarding incident, things like that, and then it's navigating that communication with CQC. What is any law enforcement process that's going to take place, and having somebody on their team, so to speak. So obviously we're there as a sort of guidance and support of how to go, how well they need to communicate with CQC, making sure that they stay on track with responses. Not getting back to CQC is like one of the worst things, in the sense of if you've been given a deadline, either do it before then or definitely at least on the deadline. So working with them to collate all the evidence that they need, obviously put things in place, and sometimes if an issue's happened, if a provider or a manager's not sure, well, what is the next step? How could we have prevented that from happening? What do we need to do going forward to make sure that doesn't happen again? Having a consultant there who can say to you, and guide you on that and say, well, actually, if this would have happened or these things would have been put in place, that probably wouldn't have happened. So these are things that need. So having that, plan going forward with deadlines, who's responsible, is a good tool to have for CQC as well, to say, we've taken advice.
More evidence.
We've taken advice, this is the plan, so what we're going to do to make sure that never happens again, or, whatever the situation might be. But I think people see it as a cost, but it's actually an investment, because obviously your rating going down with CQC impacts the business in so many other ways. Staff retention, being able to attract new service users or residents, is public facing, so all those ways that you can make sure that you're keeping obviously your best rating as possible. Investing in a consultant is a really good way of having that advice and that support.
He's a good kind of person to work in a multidisciplinary way with other stakeholders, but also with legal advice as well. So the solicitor involved, if there is a legal team involved, can kind of work alongside the consultant. Again, you've got that kind of like triangle of support really for the
usually
staff.
In the communication there'll be in the emails and things like that, in the chains there'll be the consultant, myself, lawyers that are involved,
like a notice of proposal, closure, or whatever it might be. And then you've also got your insurance on the side as well, being involved, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, we have seen a change when the worst case situation is someone's downgraded to inadequate. We have seen some insurers now not offer renewal terms. If that's the case, or has consistently been the case over the last few inspections, which puts the business in a difficult place, because you must carry that insurance, and also local authority contracts as well, because they've got insurance related requirements. And that puts them in a difficult spot, because it's a material fact we need to disclose to other insurers, and we need to go with chapter and verse, and that's where, if they are dealing with third parties who are independent and the client is happy for information to be shared, then that stacks up any kind of story that we're building. So okay, these are the things that have happened, and since then, say they bring Care Improvement Associates in, they mirror the CQC and what they found, and the clients held their hands up. This is what has been constructed as an improvement plan, and this is where they're at with it. There's been dialogue with the local authority. They're happy with the improvements being made, and are still backing the home and asking them to take contracts if they can take them, or are happy to maintain residents within the home. CQC have given consistent dialogue, and this is what it looks like, and just try and build some reassurance into it by engaging all those stakeholders And software systems, again, with the clients actually invest in the business even further because they can see evidencing as a problem, or we can build that overall picture. The other thing is CQC, challenges, which will be your world. But again, we always say to clients, if you are going to challenge that's fine, not a problem. But we still must not wait to tackle these items, or if you think, you have them already in place, to just really scrutinise them and evidence that and show they are.
So if local authorities have put an embargo on, so they can't take on any more residents or service users, that might sometimes is their main source of client referrals, and obviously that then has a big impact for the amount of work that they could give staff members. If staff members are not getting the amount of work that they require and need, then you obviously will get people leaving, and it just snowballs, and people can end up in a really bad situation. So
I think there needs to be, and believe it or not, I've seen it several times, there needs to be the realisation that when it does go wrong, this type of this industry is one where when it does go wrong, more often than not, it can be absolutely business critical. And what I would recommend and just seek to reinforce is that time really is of the essence. CQC operates their regulatory system with timescales. So you receive a notice, you have 28 days to respond to that notice. I've had clients that come after 14 days. They've had it for 14 days, so that's 50% of the time gone. If we're exceptionally lucky, and we say we can go to the CQC and say, look, we've just been instructed, please can we seek a further week, further 7 days. Sometimes we'll get that time, sometimes we don't. So if you cut half your time off straight away, you're on the back foot before you even begin. But even with the 28 days, if the client is in a position whereby it takes the advice, it's proactive, so the first call, really, one of the very first calls should be to the broker. And Johnny and his colleagues can manage the situation, and that would invariably be phoning Rachel, phoning Sam, phoning myself. And in my experience, if a client has the benefit of the consultants on board and in the background the legal team working, that's a perfect scenario. Because I won't go in, I'm not trained, and the last thing I would do is seek to go in and organise somebody's medicine administration. That's not my role. But in the meantime, Rachel and co can be in there, putting boots on the ground, assessing the situation, dealing with it, looking at the realistic action plans, whereas I can be in the background liaising with Rachel and working on the documentation, the presenting and packaging that information that needs to go to CQC, so that when they read that, they will see that this is a service that really, for whatever has happened, there's an explanation, and more importantly, they receive a good understanding of how it's happened, why it's happened, and what that provider will do to make sure it doesn't happen again. And if they see that, again, it's the same words, isn't it? Proactive, honest, open, transparent. If they see that in the correspondence, that does buy a lot of goodwill when dealing with the regulator. And it's those services that put the head in the sand. They think, oh, God, I don't know what to do with this. Another day's passed. 14 days later, they're phoning Johnny. Johnny's trying to get hold of myself, trying to get hold of Rachel. That can take a day if we're out of the office. Time is ticking very quickly. And
we've experienced that as well before, where people have come to us right at the last minute, and when we get into it with them and talked about, they have sort of buried their head in the sand, not wanted to face it, and it's a really emotional, stressful time for managers and sort of providers, especially if it's a small service and they don't have the backing of a whole team. I think sometimes if someone's under a lot of pressure, but there's a team of you, maybe somebody sort of, that's their thing where they can step up and take hold of that situation. If you're a small provider and there's just you and a couple of team members that you own your small service, it can fear of it, and they've never been in that situation before, don't really know what to do, and then that's when sort of bury the head, and days are passing, like you say. They needed to have addressed it right at the beginning.
This is it, and it is. I fully accept this is it's a counsel of perfection, but when you are in receipt of a notice, for example, if it's a proposal to cancel, especially, you have to allocate this. This has to go to the very top of the organisation because, stating the obvious, it is business critical. You have to. It is a drop everything moment. Make no mistake. So if you were too busy before, you're in a whole new world when you receive a notice. So you have to have key staff involved right from receipt of that letter, dealing with it. Because if you don't, you're not going to. The product you produce in your response is not going to be sufficient to allay the concerns.
It's not going to cut it.
It's not.
No.
It's not. And I've seen that happen many times.
Yeah,
I guess-
we worked with a provider in a care home, and it was a family-run business, and they had a really good team. They'd been doing it for a long time. Something had gone wrong. They'd got a notice, but the owner's response to that was just he lost his head, and he was just like, "Leave us alone. All my residents are happy. We're happy. CQC just need to leave us alone." And us trying to, obviously he was really stressed. It does it, and it obviously his response wasn't, it's quite negative, and obviously he was stressing, but the way he was speaking with the CQC inspector, and even we were trying to support him, and he was getting quite defensive and challenging, and it can end up in that situation, and it all worked out for the better, and we got it sorted. But it's how you respond in that situation as well. It needs to be.
I guess because his emotions are invested in it, if it's his business, and I guess that's where having the support from the third party can help you navigate through that more professionally without kind of projecting yourself in an unprofessional way. And because the CQC are just going to think, well, if you're being unprofessional at this point, what's going to happen when we're not around, type thing. When the eyes aren't on your service, what's going on, so just having that independent person to kind of, or as near to independent as you can get really from a solicitor or a consultant or both, supporting you through it. I think it can just kind of give you that, it's that moral support, but also that professional guidance as well, just to make sure you're on the right track with how you respond in conversations and letters and emails. Because you can just let your emotions run away and go, get lost type thing, we're doing a great job, go away, but that's not going to work. So it's definitely really helpful to have that.
It's a scary position, isn't it? So you can understand it to a
Absolutely,
degree, especially when it's a long-standing business and it's family owned. And,
Absolutely.
but I think, like you said, being proactive, and it's going to cost money to bring in third parties. Acutely aware that there are businesses where it's profitability is difficult to manage. But equally, long term in that scenario, it can be that investment that not just helps you get out of the hole now, but actually revitalises the business long term and makes it ready for, I guess, the world as it is now, or what is coming.
Moving, with the times, and I think there will be providers like that who are, we've always done it this way, just leave us to it. We're a family, and residents are like my family members, and that's great that they've got those relationships. But some providers that we do work with are very, this is how we've always done things, and it's those providers I think we might find this challenging with this new framework change, and we're going to have to work really closely with them to.
And they're not your family. They're your customers and your clients and your service users, and there is like a professional boundary thing there, isn't it? If people are literally treating them like the family, I get the whole ethos of they're our family, but actually you're a professional registered organisation and they're not your family, so it needs to be dealt with professionally.
I think it's crucial then at this time that providers and managers to actually immerse themselves in the information what's already out there, so it doesn't come to this. So that, but sadly for some, they'll still put their head in the sand and go, we don't want the new framework. Oh, it'll just run as smoothly as it always has, and we don't need digital. We can keep going with the paper. But the new framework requires you eventually to be on digital. You're going to have to go on to digital. So you need to look at what grants are available locally. Talk to your local authority. Go to Skills for Care and all these other key organisations, so that you can look at what's out there. Look at what digital providers are out there. Talk with them, ask them what benefits they can give you to get you up with them, negotiate with them. But I think it's crucial that providers start engaging with what's happening, so that they can start the changes now. Because we know that it's going to be it's going to be some time before it's fully operational. But the longer you put your head in the sand and say, no, it's going to be fine, or we know CQC haven't released everything yet, that's fine. But what they have released, start engaging with it, start using it, start looking at strategies, because then CQC can actually say, okay, you're doing something.
Yeah.
You know, if they turn up in a few months' time, and they can say, oh, you're starting to actually look at it in relation to the new framework.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's crucial for businesses.
Yeah.
That's a really good point about looking at grants. Also, your colleagues in the sector, your peers, are important, but also the third parties you're already engaging with. And you may not have spoken to your insurance broker about these kind of things. It might have been a transactional service up until now, but ring your broker, see who maybe they work with partners, who they can introduce you to, or speak to your local care inspectors or whoever it might be. Any third parties that you work with, they might be able to point you in the right direction. They might help you lobby for discounts or enhanced offers or whatever it might be.
Saying at the minute in North Yorkshire, if you're within the North Yorkshire area, there's expansion grants that you can apply for small businesses. So like between £1,000 and 10,000, you could justify applying for one of those grants. I think it's saying that you need to expand utilising software or getting some consultancy or whatever it might be. So definitely worth looking into things like that. Local kind of business hubs like Yorkshire in Business, those sorts of people. With them, what's available grant wise. There isn't often that many grants, but when they are there, you need to access them if you can.
Definitely.
And then there's the Skills for Care registered managers and providers meetings and forums locally up and down the country. People can engage with those so that they can talk to other managers, other providers, and say, okay, what's going on? The local authorities do provider meetings and ones for registered managers, which you can go into. Just network and start talking to other people.
Online,
online.
There's registered managers, Facebook groups,
That's
there's
right.
LinkedIn. There's a lot of talk on LinkedIn at the moment. It's quite noisy on LinkedIn, isn't it, with everybody sharing their information, their input, their professional opinion on things, resources that they've created. I know the Caring View have put some good resources on there that brings all the framework together, and they've said if you need to use any of these tools or anything like that in your business, they're quite happy for you to just rebrand them and use them as your own. That there's nothing around costs or anything. So there's a lot of people out there doing quite a lot to help providers.
Local care associations as well.
You mentioned tech grants as well, didn't you?
Yes, so there's grants out there for tech. So if you contact your local authority, or also if you contact a lot of the organisations providing the digital software, they're telling you themselves that there's grants out there. So just contact them and see and talk to other organisations, other care providers. I think the time of us being insular and not working together is gone. We've got to work together.
And it's part of the framework is working in a multidisciplinary way with in partnership with other organisations. So it's key. So one of an outstanding provider, basically.
Exactly. One of the things Happy Futures has done is it's got a care association, so that people can work together. So we can give those details.
Yeah,
to you.
You're working with the providers.
Other providers, and we actually did some meetings face to face where we got an ex CQC inspector who came and did a talk on what the new framework could look like, and legal representatives there as well. So we've been doing these meetings to just start sharing good practice.
I mean, that's another good point. Communicate with your care associations out there. What do you want to see from them? How can they add value to you? Because I think that a lot of them will be absolutely all ears and would love the engagement. One thing, I'm backtracking a bit here. One thing we didn't kind of touch upon earlier, or it's come back to you or something, Matt. But when it does go wrong in the CQC, if you hit with a downgrading or something like that, we've kind of spoken about engaging partners and mentioned challenging CQC and challenging them in the right way by not sending an email of it being leave me alone. From your point of view, Matt, because you will engage clients in assisting them with engaging CQC in the right way if they are going to challenge, is there any kind of do's and don'ts that you've seen or any trends?
One of the most important, and there are several points, but one of the most important is what we touched upon earlier, and that is it has to be taken seriously. There has to be, if you're in a position where you need to challenge the CQC, then something has gone wrong. You are very much on their radar, and if you do not act promptly and effectively, then the service potentially is in jeopardy, and that's certainly the case if you receive a notice. So back to my comment, really, the directors, the owners, they need to ensure that the appropriate staff are dealing with this, not for the director to pass it down to the registered manager. Well, it's his home, it's her home, they know it better than me. That's not particularly helpful. I've said previously, it's a drop everything moment. It really is. The engagement needs to be grasped. What I mean by that is at senior level, the organisation needs to act, delegate where necessary to those that will effectively be able to manage the situation and provide the data to collate and allow either the consultants, the lawyers, or both to collate and present that information. So again, when you're scrabbling around looking high and low on a bookshelf for a policy that you're hoping's been updated and it hasn't since 2018, that tells Rachel, it tells myself, hang on a minute, we might have a problem here.
There must be scenarios though where it's the care provider does have a point maybe, and that CQC have potentially missed something, or you know where it might be the flip side.
That's right, and that does happen. This, through my experience, this happens when a home following an inspection that's not gone well receives the notice, and that's because, for example, the staff member, I don't know where the policy is, the laptop's not there with the password on it, or somebody's not in today who has the password. All these little bits, but put together, when a home has a poor inspection, it's not normally one or two things that go wrong. It's normally a collation. It's normally half a dozen, 6, 7, 8 areas, and the way to challenge is to engage with them. That dealing with a host of regulators that I deal with, in particular the CQC, it's 100% counterproductive to be confrontational. You have the relationship with that regulator, and once this incident is dealt with, be it a poor inspection, be it a safeguarding matter, all being well, you will continue to have that relationship when your business gets through it and moves to the next stage. So if you are aggressive in your correspondence, if you're unhelpful, confrontational, or the inspector said this, that and the other that was wrong, that really doesn't help. So again, back to being open, transparent and honest. And when I say that, I certainly don't mean don't put your case, but if something is factually incorrect, you show them, you tell them, and provide the information. Everything which I've said before around this table, everything goes back to evidencing. Nathan and Sam were saying earlier, it's no use, oh, well, we've done that, that's fascinating, show me you've done it. If you can show me, I can show the CQC. And if they're wrong, let's show them. I say, look, we understand that paragraph X, there's a concern relating to medication. Well, here we go, we produce this document, this register, these training certificates. Let's show the evidence that corrects them, and then they can tick that off. It's no longer a concern. That's the aim of the response, is to allay those concerns. And the way you do that is with evidencing through documentation, through records that are hopefully up to date, they've been reviewed, and they are 100% centred on the particular service user. Because what I see is that they will focus, you might have 20, you might have 80 service users, but the notice will usually relate to maybe 3, 4 or 5 particular service users where they can demonstrate a chain of ineffective procedures and systems. I don't know if that's your experience.
Yeah, I think as well. When we've done an audit, sometimes there might be an instance where there's a piece of evidence that the consultant wants to see and it's not there, and somebody say, "I'll send you it." And obviously, we're there on behalf of the client in that instance, and we're there to be as supportive as we can be, and give a most realistic view and experience of what an inspection would be like. But even from our point of view, it could be days later where we're still saying, we have to cut it off and say, we've been asking and it's still not been sent in. A CQC inspector would not wait that long. No. They would say it's not there, and then that's a big gap. Then that's when it could lead to and then people that will then say, well, we did have it. That manager just didn't know what it was, or she didn't send it in time. And that's what we're saying about being responsive in a timely manner. It's really important, because if that could be a big gap, that even if you did have the evidence, it's just not been given in time. So people need to respond quickly and get that across.
Yeah, I think it's making sure everybody who needs access to that key information in the office, who's going to be involved in that inspection, has access to all that information, so that they can access it. So when CQC says, "Can you go get me this, this, and this?" you can bring them in. And they go, there you go.
Yeah.
Under the digital, when it goes everything digital, you'll actually give them access to certain things, and you can actually then track them to see what they've been on and what they've looked at, and you just give them that. You tick a box, and it's just for CQC access, and they can see stuff what they need to pertain to the inspection.
Yeah.
So that'll be a lot better when it goes that way.
Yeah.
It'll make it easier.
Just through your software that you
use. The software you can give them access, so everything's on, and the software can link to that. But then you give the CQC privilege to just see the information they need. Ensure that it adheres to GDPR and all the other stuff, but it gives them that. Same as Ofsted when they come in, similar to process.
The outstanding gives the CQC access to things that you want them to see.
That's it. You tick it, don't you? You tell them. It makes it a lot easier. So.
And in some instances, there's the inspectors that are more lenient than others. So you might have an inspector who cuts it off and says, if it's not there, it's not there. It's not been taken into consideration. You might have another inspector who will give you a few more days. And with CQC inspectors as well, a lot of them have got different backgrounds. They've come into CQC, sometimes not from a care background. So naturally, like all of us do, if you've got an area of expertise, you'll naturally sort of lean towards and focus on that area. So you might find two providers might have a very different experience, because one inspector was really hot on one topic, whereas the other one was really honing in on a different area. So I think it's obviously just balancing.
I'm hoping the single assessment framework will make things more consistent, with them continually assessing evidence all the time throughout the year. I'm hoping it will put less onus on that, if the inspection even happens at all on one day. I don't think it's going to be as much of that type of inspection anymore, is it? It's going to be more continuing, like we said earlier, monitoring it throughout the year, and they'll be asking you for certain bits of evidence to send over or share on the software. So I'm hoping it'll take away that onus of that kind of one day thing where that person might have interest in, say, I don't know, Mental Capacity Act, for example, and they'll focus on a lot of stuff around that. Hopefully it'll kind of
balance
even things out.
But it will mean, like I speak to providers, I spoke to one last week who they've not been inspected since 2018, and they got a good, and obviously was speaking to me saying, I would like a mock because I think they might be due an inspection. They've been using that good ratings obviously since 2018. In my conversation, they are having a lot of challenges with the manager that they've got in place and things like that. So there won't be any scope for that anymore, as in people being able to continue on a good.
Can't hide behind a 5-year rating.
It will be public facing when it adjusts, and it can go up and down at any point. So I think people need to be more hot on compliance more than ever.
And the need for support with that, I think, could be probably more so. If you want them to be proactive. Because it is a lot to take in. Even as people who support providers, you go on the CQC website and there's so many links and so many different facets to it where you've got to get your head around it. I can totally understand why a registered manager or a quality manager or a care provider, business owner, whatever it might be, might look at that and just think, I can't actually take all that in.
Yeah.
So that's where the training company or the consultant or the legal team or your colleagues or your quality manager internally kind of can help you break it down and actually digest it in kind of smaller bite-sized pieces. And through your mock inspection and your audits and your evidence reviews, it kind of does naturally just break that down into more manageable process for you to learn more productively, I think. Because it is a lot.
It's a lot. And I think when you're running a bit, the service itself day to day, that's, you know, people are working extra.
It's always a Friday at 4 o'clock, it drops into
So it needs to become a priority for companies now, to spend time, even if it's a few hours every week, just that little bit, and start discussing it with managers.
And getting into good habits with the team, and obviously knowing what their part to play is in that, and it just becomes part and parcel of day-to-day operations in the sense of when you're identifying evidence for each of those areas, and
Good stuff. Well, I think that pretty much comes to the end of our first recording as McClarrons Care Network. So hopefully, hopefully providers find it of interest, and it's not all doom and gloom. It's opportunity and time to reach out and build relationships with partners who can support them forwards. We definitely want this to be a proactive piece and a educational piece, and not a scary piece of content. So hopefully providers find it of interest, and we're here to support if they need us.